Welcome to Pushing the Limits with your host, Lisa Tamati, where it's all about health optimization, anti-aging, longevity, and being the very best you can be. Brought to you by lisatamati.com.
Well, hi everyone, and welcome into Pushing the Limits. Today, I'm super excited because I get to interview Dr. Rod Claycomb, and I get to introduce you to our new product from our biotech company, Aevum Labs. Now, I've been talking about it for a few months on the podcast, and it's taken over 2 years of formulation work, working with a world-class scientific advisory team to bring this formulation to the market. And today, we're doing an interview on one of the ingredients in our formulation called immune defense protein. Now, this formulation was something that I identified in the market as being missing. And I really wanted something that would help the aging of the immune system. After all my research over the last few years, I've come to realize that the immune system is at the basis of all of the hallmarks of aging. It affects all of them, all 14 of them. So as a foundational longevity product, I could not find out anything out in the market that was going to help the aging, or something called immunosenescence, which is the aging of the immune system. And it's why as we get older, we become more prone to things like cancer, not responding well to infections, pathogens, and autoimmunity, and all of those sorts of problems. And so I set out on a journey to found our company Aevum Labs, and then to work with a really amazing team of people to bring you this amazing formulation. It's taken over 2 years of work to get to this point, but now we have in our hot little hands our first product called Rejuvenate. Now, our company's called Aevum Labs, Aevum, and the product is Rejuvenate for obvious reasons. And this was a product that's going to help give you back the function of a younger immune system. And we're going to be doing a deeper dive in the coming months into various aspects of this formulation. But today we're doing an interview with Dr. Rod Claycomb, who is the CEO and founder of Quantic. And they've done over 15 years worth of clinical research into something called immune defense protein, which is one of the cornerstones of our formulation. And our formulation is really targeting gut health. It's targeting leaky gut, leaky barriers actually in the body. So anything that's exposed to the outside world, it helps with immunoglobulins, transfer factors, helps, is antimicrobial, antioxidant. It is got immunoglobulins. It is a really powerful combination. And I really wanted this for my mum because I wanted something that even fragile, sick, older people can take safely, and it's going to give them back the function of a better immune system. And I've seen, just anecdotally, in her case and in my case, our lymphocyte counts go up, which is something that you fight with as you get older, that this starts to deteriorate. So I'm going to pass over now to Dr. Rod Claycomb to introduce immune defense protein, which is just one of the 4 ingredients that we have in our formulation. So I hope you enjoy the show. And if you're wanting to get some Rejuvenate, you can go over to lisatamati.com, hit the shop button, and there you will find Aevum Labs Rejuvenate product, and we'll put the link, of course, in the show notes below. You can also visit our dedicated website, which is aevumlabs.co.nz. And depending on when you listen to this, there may be a discount that's available if you put in the code Aevum. On my website, you should get a discount depending on when you listen to this. But in any case, this is a foundational longevity and immune system product that's going to help with everything from gut health to autoimmunity to cancer surveillance to the barriers, all of these sorts of things. So enjoy this deep dive into immune defense proteins, one of the key factors, with Dr. Rod Claycomb. Well, hi, everyone, and welcome into Pushing the Limits today. It's fantastic to have you with me. Now, I have Dr. Rod Claycomb with me. Welcome to the show, Dr. Rod. It's fantastic to have you.
Thank you for having me, Lisa. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's really exciting. We're going to be diving into a ingredient today, a molecule today. What would you call it? You call it a molecule, or you call it an ingredient?
Well, ingredient, it's more than one molecule, as you'll find out here shortly.
Exactly, yes. We've got to get the right terminology. So Dr. Rod is the founder of Quantic, along with some colleagues. And Quantech has been developing a novel whey protein with 50 bioactives in it called immune defense protein. And I've been super excited to learn about this. You guys listening out there all know that I'm a longevity, anti-aging, health optimization obsessed person. And this came onto my radar through a friend of mine, Peter Leakey. So thanks, Peter, for bringing this to our attention. And we're going to be using this hopefully soon in one of our formulations at Aevum Labs. So we're really, really excited about this. So we thought we'd get Dr. Rod on to explain straight from the scientist's mouth, really, what is immune defense protein and why am I so excited about it? So, Dr. Rod, before you answer that, though, give us a bit of a background on yourself and introduce yourself to the audience.
Background on myself. Well, as you can tell from my accent, I'm American, but I've been living in New Zealand for, it'll be 25 years in June.
Wow.
So, but my background is all in the dairy industry. So I consider myself a dairy expert from the cow through the milking process, through the processing, and now into, as you'll find out today, the finished ingredient and finished product end too. So dairy is my game. I did my PhD in the 90s at UC Davis in California. And at that time, we were developing the world's first progesterone biosensor. Wow. To put on farms to measure progesterone in milk to help farmers manage their reproduction more efficiently. So that's really the tech part of dairy that got me started to be where I am today.
Yeah, the thing that most people would never think about are some of the technologies that goes into the dairy industry and to the food side of it, and also that type of side of it. And farming is so much more complex than it used to be, where you used to go out in your gumboots and milk a cow and have the milk on the table at breakfast. It's a little bit more than that now.
Oh, you still do that? You still do that?
We still do that, yeah, some places. And that's really fascinating. I always think that sometimes the animals get more accurate measurements, testing done than the humans do a lot of the time. And they're quite lucky.
Certainly more frequent, that's for sure.
Yeah, more frequently. And the farmers know what is going on with their herd more than we know what's going on in our own bodies half the time. And trying to get a blood test is sometimes a bit of a mission for ourselves. But without getting off topic, so dairy is your area of expertise. And then how did you discover immune defense protein? What was that process? What were you looking at there that you were trying to find?
Yeah, well, we weren't trying to find anything, Lisa. We, back in the early 2000s, we were the first company to bring robotic milking to New Zealand. And the two things I was charged with when I was asked to come to New Zealand for work was to look at on-farm sensors and automation and on-farm fractionation of milk components. Mm-hmm. And about 3 or 4 years into it, we had commercialized some on-farm milk component sensing technologies like on-farm somatic cell count measurement for mastitis, on-farm fat and protein for milk quality and feeding efficiency and those sorts of things. And when we brought the robotic milking system into New Zealand, we were milking one cow every 10 minutes. And so you can imagine the milk flow rate was pretty low as opposed to 200 cows in 2 hours, And so we started looking at ways we could fractionate lactoferrin on farm. Lactoferrin in the early 2000s was probably as big as it is today, but it was a lot newer of an ingredient in milk that was pretty well understood. There was an international conference for lactoferrin that's run biannually. That's still run today.
Wow.
And our being technological people, we thought, well, if we could figure out a way to fractionate the lactoferrin on farm cow side, maybe we could add some efficiencies in there, return some value behind the farm gate, and who knows, maybe even increase the quality of the lactoferrin as opposed to being extracted in the factory. And so that's what we did. We built the world's, when I say we, it was a PhD student at the University of Waikato who did this, built the world's first on-farm lactoferrin fractionation robot.
Wow.
So while one cow was being milked, the previous cow's lactoferrin was being extracted right beside the machine.
Wow.
And so fast forward to sort of 2000, 5, 6, 7, we decided we were going to commercialize this, and we started talking to dairy companies, and the dairy companies just didn't want a bar of changing the centralized dairy processing model to having on-farm pre-processing, except for the fact they said, if you could prove to us that the on-farm quality is better than what we get out of the factory, then you have an audience. And so we hired my Quantec co-founder, Dr. Judy Bragger, in 2005-06 to start doing just that, looking at the quality of the lactoferrin we were pulling out on farm versus the factory. And there was definitely a difference in the quality. It probably wasn't measurable enough to justify the whole switch in the shakeup in the dairy industry for processing. But in so looking at she started out looking at the antimicrobial properties of lactoferrin. And she kept discovering that the more and more she purified the lactoferrin, the less and less the antimicrobial activity became. And that was intriguing. I guess that was the aha moment. So we weren't actually looking to discover IDP. We were trying to characterize the quality of the lactoferrin. And long story short, that discovery was this 50 plus suite of whey proteins, what we now call IDP, are all in milk to protect the cow from infection and inflammation. Wow. And it takes all of them together in roughly the same ratio as they are in milk in the first place in order to have their maximum antimicrobial activity. Mm-hmm. And so that's where IDP came from. We filed a patent on that synergistic effect of all of the bioactive whey proteins in milk. And fortunate for us, dairy companies already had a way to extract them from milk because they're extracted as part of the lactoferrin process. Mm-hmm. We just characterized what we wanted them to do, turned that into a freeze-dried ingredient, and started looking at ways to use that freeze-dried ingredient in both animal and human health applications.
Wow. And so give us a bit of a background on the lactoferrin itself, because not everyone is familiar with the benefits of lactoferrin in general. Can you give us a bit of an overview of lactoferrin itself?
Well, what lactoferrin can't do is probably the shorter list.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty...
lactoferrin is an amazing milk protein. Its primary function is iron binding. So that's where the ferrin part comes from. Lactoferrin has a heme group, much like the hemoglobin in your blood. Mm-hmm. And so lactoferrin binds iron. So it can do a number of things through that core bioactivity. It can, some bacteria require iron to metabolize. Mm-hmm. So by lactoferrin binding it, it can steal the iron from the bacteria. That's one example of what lactoferrin can do. Lactoferrin can carry iron in your body to places where it's needed. It can't just doesn't only sequester iron; it can actually deliver iron. And then, I'm going to shorten this list because we could be here all day talking about lactoferrin. It's got 5 years of biannual conferences dedicated to the thing.
Right.
Yeah, it's been shown to have antimicrobial properties, antiviral properties, anti-inflammatory properties. A lot of the properties that I'll talk about with you today, Lisa, on IDP is the same as lactoferrin, because lactoferrin is the most abundant protein in IDP. IDP has a minimum of 40% lactoferrin in it.
Wow. Okay, so lactoferrin is also a transglycosylating agent. I recently found out from Dr. Sandra Kaufman. Did you know that one?
No, I didn't.
Well, there was
I love it.
So I interviewed Dr. Sandra Kaufman last week, a wonderful woman who's actually an anesthesiologist, a pediatric anesthesiologist, but she's written a book called The Kaufman Protocol, and one of her favorite ingredients or molecules is lactoferrin, and she's a big fan of eating donuts, you see, herself. Like, she's had a problem with donuts. So she's always been trying to find ways for getting rid of advanced glycation end products is one of the areas that she specialized in. And funnily enough, she came across research that lactoferrin actually sucks up excess, advanced glycation end products and can be very beneficial. So when she eats a donut, she has some lactoferrin with it, along with a number of other molecules.
That information is gold, Lisa. I'd love to
You'll have to listen to the actual interview. So yeah, not that I'm promoting everyone go out and eat donuts. What she's trying to do there is to lower the sugar levels in the body, so you don't get these terrible, advanced glycation end products, which really are really, really damaging to the body. And so that was a part of her strategy, and lactoferrin just happened to pop up in that conversation. So I was like, oh, very interesting. Okay, I'm glad I've been able to teach you something today. That's funny. That's funny. So lactoferrin is lactoferrin is a really important piece of this, but IDP is far more than lactoferrin. The other one of the major pieces is lactoperoxidase. Can you talk to a lactoperoxidase and what that is?
Yeah, well, let me just back up a second, and I'll describe in a nutshell what IDP is, because instead of talking about the individual proteins first, let me just explain what it is. So milk is 85% water, only 15% solids, and that 15% solids roughly divided between fat, sugar, milk sugar or lactose, and protein. And of that 5% protein fraction, 85% of the protein is casein. So the protein that's used in cheese. And only 15% of that 5% is whey protein. So that's the protein that gets lost in the cheese making process. You might have heard curds and whey, it's the whey that goes. Now, 85% of the whey is two particular whey proteins that we call inactive whey proteins, alpha-lactalbumin and beta-lactoglobulin. And those proteins are great sources of amino acids. So that's why whey is spray dried and put into sports drinks. They're sources of amino acids. You've probably used heaps of whey proteins in your career.
Yeah, some, not that much actually.
Oh, right.
But some, yeah.
Yeah, well, like I said, they're inactive, those two proteins, but they're great sources of amino acids that your body needs to build muscle. It's the small percentage, the 15% of the whey fraction that we call the bioactive whey fraction. And it's in that fraction that we now know there's over 50 individual bioactive whey proteins. And it's that whole fraction together that we call IDP.
So you've got a wonderful graphic on your website, actually, with the big circle, that's the milk, and then 85% water, and then 15% protein, and that's broken to casein. And that really sort of gives you a bit of a pictorial sort of story, if you like, of how you've got down to this IDP. And I think it's like 1 gram of IDP per 10 liters of milk. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah. So on average, every 10 liters of normal milk contains 1 gram of IDP.
So going out and having a glass of milk today is not going to cut the mustard, really, so to speak.
No, you're going to have to drink a lot of milk to get the amount of IDP that you'd need to have a proper active dose of IDP. And of course, if you drink that much milk, you're also drinking all of the other stuff that milk provides too, which are nutritious, but in excess, of course, you don't want to do that.
Yeah, and generally we've got a lot of sugar and a lot of fat in our diets anyway. We probably don't want to have 10 litres worth of milk in order to get the 1 gram.
If you're eating that many donuts, Lisa. No.
Yeah, no, definitely. Okay, so and what does the word bioactive mean? Can you explain that to bioactive proteins? What do you mean by that when you say that?
Right. Okay. So I just explained that the two whey proteins, beta-lactoglobulin and alpha-lactalbumin, are what we call non-bioactive proteins. So they don't do anything, those two proteins, except for they're just proteins. They're globulin proteins. So they can bind to things and pull things together, but they're a nutritious source of amino acids when they break down in the gut. What we mean by bioactive is things like enzymes, which the proteins have a tertiary structure, a three-dimensional structure that can grab onto substrates in a fluid and transform them into something that kills a bacteria. Or they transform them into something that disrupts an inflammatory pathway. So they have a biological functionality associated with them. And so that's what we mean by bioactivity. And at Quantec, after discovering that the sum of the whole was better than the individual parts. That was our core discovery. We really didn't know why or whether this stretched beyond antimicrobial activity. So we spent the better part of the last decade and a half researching just that. We keep looking at different types of bioactivity. So antimicrobial, I mentioned, anti-inflammatory. During COVID, we had to shut the lab down and we didn't know what to do. So we thought, well, everything that we found that lactoferrin could do over the years, we found that IDP can do better.
Wow.
So there was a lot of publications on the antiviral activities of lactoferrin. So we thought, well, let's have a look and see if IDP can do better. And lo and behold, it does that too.
Just interrupting the show to let you know about our patron community here on the podcast at Pushing the Limits. We've been going for 8 years and we really need your support to keep the show on air and free to everybody so that everyone gets this fantastic information from all these great doctors, scientists, athletes, business people from all around the world. So we would love you to come and join us. You get a lot of exclusive member benefits when you do, but really it's about supporting the show and keeping it on air. And for a coffee or two a month, that would be fantastic if you can come and join us. You can go to patron.lisatamati.com. That's patron.lisatamati.com and check it all out.
But one of the most surprising, and this is one area we still don't know the reasons for, is selective antimicrobial activity. So your body has really good bacteria all over it and in it.
Microbiome,
Yep, we call those commensal bacteria. They're good for you, as opposed to pathogenic bacteria, which are bad for you. Over this decade and a half of antimicrobial research, we kept finding that the IDP activity against the commensals wasn't as good as the pathogens. And so things like Streptococcus salivarius in your mouth, Staphylococcus hominis and epidermidis on your skin, lactobacilli and bifidobacteria in your gut, IDP didn't do a very good job at killing these, while it really did a great job at inhibiting the pathogenic bacteria. And so we thought, well, that's interesting. But it makes sense. Like everything goes back to the cow, right? This system is developed by nature in the mammary gland of a cow to protect the cow from infection and inflammation. So it makes sense that a natural antimicrobial defense system wouldn't develop the ability to kill
the good stuff.
Yeah.
Wow.
Why that is, we still don't know.
Wow.
But it's interesting.
So this is very, very powerful then for anything so digestive related, so microbiome, because this is the problem, like we talk about antibiotics, we have to take antibiotics for some sort of disease or something that we absolutely need to have, but we're wiping out our microbiome in the process, for example. So to find something that's antimicrobial but doesn't destroy the good guys, but only destroys the bad guys, is a really a powerful intervention, really, if we want to be able to ward off things like viruses and pathogens. In gut barrier integrity was another one of the research papers that you've done that showed that the transepithelial resistance, electrical resistance was improved, so that your gut barrier is, when you get leaky gut, just for those listening, your junctions in your gut pull apart, and this can cause major issues, just putting it very, very, very oversimplified. And so this improves that gut barrier integrity. And gut barrier integrity is just so I've studied this, quite a bit for, it's just so important, because when you have a leaky gut, you are aging faster. Let's put it that way. Your organs are deteriorating faster. You've got inflammation. You're aging. You're basically aging your organs and everything. It impacts the brain. It impacts so many things. That's why I'm very, very excited to learn that it actually helped with the gut barrier function, because I don't think people understand how important that piece of that one sentence is. Can you explain a little bit on that?
Well, we're still learning what that mechanism is. We've, like you said, we're about to publish a paper on the effect of IDP treatment at the gut mucosal level. So as you said, the gut has a mucosa and lining to it, and those cells are held together by connecting proteins, basically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And all the indications so far is that when you expose those cells to IDP, after stimulating a breakdown in that gut junction, the IDP can actually help start to heal the junction. And it appears that there may be some adhesion proteins that get upregulated by one or more of the IDP proteins. So we're still learning about that. The next step for us there is to try to translate that into some human studies that make sense. But you're right, everything starts in the gut, from immunity to inflammation. It's incredible what science is discovering about the gut. Interestingly, we've spent a lot of time in China. A lot of our business is up in China. The Chinese get this. They've talked for years about the two brains.
Yeah.
The brain up here.
Yeah, and the gut.
They talk about as being the second brain of the body. Yep. They talk about the gut-brain axis like it's everybody knows about it.
Yeah, like obvious.
Yeah. And so it's quite fascinating. When I go to China and I talk about these sorts of things, right away the light bulbs are on. They know that this is the way it is. Yeah.
Yeah, and it'd be interesting to see what happens in the future with your studies in relation to even things like mood and mood and behavior and depression and things like that, whether that have an impact on that area as well, because the gut is very much connected to the neurotransmitters. Like what's happening in the gut is going to be affecting your brain, that gut-brain axis, as you just mentioned. So it'd be very interesting to see whether the research goes into that direction too, and how much of an impact it could have actually on neurotransmitters and brains, and how our mood. There you go, another area for you to go and research.
There's no end to areas.
No, there is no end when you start looking at these sorts of things. Just interrupting the show to let you know about my longevity and anti-aging supplement range. I'd love you to go and check it out. Go to my website, lisatamati.com, and hit the shop button, and you'll see a curated range of supplements, the latest in anti-aging, longevity, health optimization, performance optimization. I've gone out into the world, interviewed the most amazing doctors and scientists, as you'll know if you follow the show, and gone and got some of the best products that are out there. Stuff that I give to my family, that's what's in my range. So go and check it out at lisatamati.com. And the other big piece, because when we, Peter and I came to you and we were, looking at formulations, we wanted to go after immunosenescence as our foundational product, basically, that we were looking to have an impact with, because immunosenescence, for those who don't know that word, means basically the aging of the immune system, and that the immune system is no longer functioning as well when we're older. And that's one of the reasons why we become so vulnerable to all of the age-related diseases, everything from cancer through to, all sorts of viruses, pathogens, everything. So going after that as one of the foundational hallmarks of aging was for us a sort of a key factor that we wanted to target in what we were doing. So we were looking for products that were going to, down-regulate some of the inflammatory cytokines and affect the immune system. And that's how we actually, came across immune defense protein and all the wonderful things that it does, because the immunosenescence story is absolutely key to us not developing things like, cancer and falling prey. And it just so happened that everybody who listens to my show knows that I talk ad nauseum about Mum and her story. And she's always been the impetus to my research, right? And in November, December, she actually contracted a E. coli virus. And so immediately, because we were aware of immune defense protein, so after I connected the dots in my brain, what was going on with her and what was happening, we put immune defense protein in. And very, very quickly, within a couple of days, she started to really improve. Now, the interesting thing was that, and this is an N of one, this is not a clinical study, this is Mum. She was very, 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 very ill. Like, we're talking we didn't know whether she was going to make it. And so it was really, really drastic. She had this particular strain of E. coli was very, very, a really bad one. And her gastroenterologist said she's lucky to survive it at her age and with her background that she's had. As soon as we put the immune defense protein in, within a few days, she started to pick up. And when we did her next blood test, what was interesting to me was that her lymphocyte count had gone up considerably. And I've been struggling with her lymphocyte count because her immune system is, she's, what do you say, immune impaired, if you like, because of the cancer background and her age and, a lot of other comorbidities that she's had. Went from I think it was 0.6 to 1.1. I'd never seen it go over 1 for the last 3 or 4 years. So I was like, whoa, I don't know if that was just that or a combination of the things that I was doing, but it was better than it was before the E. coli. And that was really interesting to me. And when I talked to one of her longevity doctors, actually, Dr. Youth, who you've been on a call with, she was like, well, that makes sense, because and she said, look, the immune defense protein, and she studied this with us and helped us with this, look at this, is one of those things that is absolutely safe for anybody to take. And that's a very important point to bring out as well, because like with someone like Mum, who's so fragile, there is a lot of things that I would like to use with her and I can't use with her. And also with their complicating cancer background as well. But yeah, so that was just a bit of an anecdote about her, and she's on it now every day and continues to do well. I'm hoping that her gut issues of the last year, which have been not only the E. coli, but she had a diverticulitis, bleeding, and nearly died a few times last year. So I'm really hopeful that it's going to impact, various aspects of what she's doing. So she's definitely on IDP for life now.
well, that's great to hear, Lisa. Like you said, it's an N of 1, so I mean, it's hard to
extrapolate that, but
extrapolate that to IDP. But you're absolutely right. IDP is completely safe to take. It's a naturally occurring suite of milk proteins, milk whey proteins, and in fact, it's even safe to take for people who have natural milk allergies because it's missing the allergenic milk proteins. And it has no lactose in it. So
lactose in it. A really, really important point, because there will be people listening to this going, is there lactose in it? And am I going to get a milk allergy from this? So absolutely no lactose in it.
No lactose in it. The sugar is gone. The milk sugar is gone. And like I said, some people have casein allergies. Some people have milk protein allergies that are mainly the alpha-lactalbumin and beta-lactoglobulin. Again, like I said, IDP is extracted from the whey. And so there's minimal levels of those things left behind.
Right, so no lactose and then only minimal of these other, I can't even say those two words yet.
Alpha-lac and beta-lac, those are the ways to say it.
Alpha-lac and beta-lac, okay, I can probably cope with that. So very few people could have still an immune response to that, perhaps.
Well, it's possible. I mean, I met somebody the other day that was allergic to black pepper, for goodness sake. So, anything's possible. But
we can have allergies to anything. But generally speaking, those who are lactose intolerant, which is quite a common thing, won't have a problem with this.
No.
That's important. Okay, so if we go back to the immune story, interleukin-6 and TNF-alpha are two things that were very clearly on our radar that we wanted to reduce in our people that are taking our formulation, because those two are very much known as being the aging cytokines, if you like, the cytokines that go up, if you like, with age. Which have a very big, detrimental effect on low-grade sort of chronic inflammation in the body, which is adding to, many, many problems in the body. Aging, it's aging you. It impacts your NAD levels, for example, which I'm deep in the research on NAD at the moment. So for us, that was a connecting story to NAD, which was interesting as well, but I won't get off topic. So interleukin-6 and TNF-alpha, tell us about those and how it impacts those immune defense protein.
Right. So in the early days, like I said, we were looking around for anything that lactoferrin could do. We thought IDP could do better. And so we jumped into the anti-inflammatory space. And we started out with some rat neutrophil studies down in Wellington at Trinity Bioactives, just looking at in a cell line, when you stimulate inflammation in rat neutrophils and then treat them with IDP, did you decrease or increase or not change at all the levels of inflammatory cytokines being produced? And we looked at IL-6 and TNF-alpha specifically for that study. And we found that, in fact, it did do that. Interestingly, lactoferrin at high concentrations actually stimulated the production of TNF-alpha and IL-6. That surprised us a little bit till the immunology people told us, well, that's to be expected. Lactoferin's role in the immune defense system is to actually kickstart your immune defenses, so inflammation's given a bad rap. It's the over-inflammation that's the problem.
That actually, let's pause there and actually, explain that a little bit, because IL-6 and TNF-alpha and other cytokines we want in that initial phase of the response to a pathogen or to a virus or whatever the case may be. It's the ongoing chronic low-grade inflammatory upregulation of these cytokines that's the problem. So that would explain why, yes, we want it in the first instance. We don't want it for going on for months or years afterwards.
Yeah, so that was a little surprising, where we saw high doses of lactoferrin stimulated production, had a pro-inflammatory effect, whereas equivalent doses of IDP with all of those other immune defense proteins in there decreased.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so you're looking, actually, the theory was, well, it's a natural defense system, therefore it probably has synergistic proteins to regulate as well as, and to this day, we don't understand which ones those are and how that's working, but it's consistent, it's repeatable. So we decided to jump into a clinical study to look at IDP supplementation. We did a double-blinded placebo-controlled study in California, looking at patients that have predisposition to inflammation. Mm-hmm. And we looked at 4 inflammatory markers in the blood, C-reactive protein, LDL, and IL-6, TNF-alpha. And in all instances, all 4 markers that we looked at, the IDP had a suppressive effect versus the placebo.
Wow.
So we actually had IDP reduced the number of subjects showing an increase in those markers, and IDP reduced the percentage increase in the key markers over the placebo effect. And so there's definitely something going on that it's probably happening at the gut level again, because you're ingesting these things. And in that particular study, we put all these, the placebo and the IDP, into capsules, so it bypassed any effect they were having in the mouth or the throat. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely all gut level things. So it's again, I come back to the cow. You'll hear me say that story a lot. These things were designed to do certain functions in the animal.
Synergistically.
The inside of the mammary gland of a cow has secretory milk secretion cells, secretory epithelial tissue. Mm-hmm. Those tissues are held together by tight junctions in much the same manner as your gut mucosa is held together.
Okay.
So when a cow gets mastitis, they get a bacterial infection that forms a biofilm on the milk secretory tissue. If that infection takes and the inflammation grows, the tight junctions start to break down inside the mammary gland, and you get mastitis. And so, again, it's not surprising. What we're trying to do with IDP in human health is to use it in the exact same way that the cow uses it. Yep. The exact same way it's been designed by nature to be used. And I guess that's what sets IDP apart from other natural health product ingredients, maybe.
Yeah. Yep.
There's lots of botanical extracts that do these things too, but a plant isn't worried about getting mastitis.
See, just to pause on that point, the more I study things, the more I'm interested in the complexes of things, like for example, I've been looking into Spermidine, which is another supplement that I'm very enthusiastic about. Upregulates autophagy, has a major impacts on the body in good positive ways. But when we looked at the synthetic Spermidine versus the one that comes from wheat germ or chlorella is another, and it's in the complex, it's in the complex of spermine, putrescine, all these horrible sounding names, Spermidine. When it's in that complex, I think it's much more effective than when you take out one single part of it and synthesize it. And and I wonder, I don't know if that's the case in everything, but I think I wonder that, like, nature is amazing in its evolution and how it's brought things about for over millennia and billions of years. It's probably brighter than we are, so there might be reasons why certain things are grouped together. And it's an interesting area to think about, at least, like, does, when you have something that you pulled out versus, and I think there are two sides to that, and each molecule will be different that you're looking at, but sometimes the extract, sometimes the combination, but just that whole complex can sometimes be an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah, well, nature is a system. You're absolutely right, and nature's systems develop over a long period of time to do things together. It's like a team.
Yeah,
and you might be able to see lactoferrin as the fullback on a team, so a very important player. But there's a bunch of other ones there that are needed to win the game. So I think you're right. There probably are things you can extract and purify from nature that are effective. I mean, we know that's the case. But quite often, the sum of the whole is better than the individual parts. And I get asked a lot, can IDP do this or can IDP do that? My first, before I even answer that question, I have to go away and think, is there a plausible reason why IDP would do that in the cow? And if there isn't, I come back to, well, probably not. It's probably not a mechanism involved that would make that work.
Wow. And on that point, I'm just thinking about, ladies who are breastfeeding and getting problems with mastitis and that type of thing. Oh, it doesn't work topically as well, or, really left field question for you to go away and think about.
Well, I can answer that very quickly because one of our key areas at Quantec over the years has been to try to use IDP-based formulations as natural treatments for mastitis.
Wow. Okay.
So when you say topically, like I said before, the inside of the cow's mammary gland is secretory epithelial tissue. So it's like the skin on your body, but without the tough epidermis over top of it. So it's a very vulnerable skin. It's an internal skin. But these milk proteins are actually acting inside the cow in a topical way.
Yep. On the inside of the topical.
Yeah, yes. Now, the difference between a cow's mammary gland and a human breast, of course, is that the cow's mammary gland has a cistern. So it has a cavity inside the mammary gland of a cow that holds a portion of the milk till the cow's milked again. Humans don't have that. So all the milk ducts end externally in a human. So you can't actually infuse IDP into a mammary gland of that anatomy.
Right. Okay.
But you could certainly use it topically. I mean, we use it for in a skincare range for alleviating acne. So the IDP kills the pathogenic organisms associated with acne, but doesn't affect the commensals, like I said, on the skin.
Like it does with the microbiome. Wow.
And it reduces redness and irritation from the acne lesions. So we've got clinical data to support that as well. Wow.
Okay. That's really interesting, because I mean, inflammation on the inside, inflammation on the outside doesn't probably make a difference with the way it's being used. Okay. So we know it does gut barrier. We know it supports the immune system with the IL-6 and the TNF alpha. We know it kills the bad bacteria, doesn't kill the good bacteria. What else does it do? What other major sort of things? Oh, I did want to ask you about the latest research on SARS-CoV-2 and COVID. Are we allowed to talk about that?
A little bit.
A little bit.
We're just about to publish that, Lisa, so I have to be a little bit careful.
Yeah, no, don't get yourself in trouble.
But yeah, so like I said right up front, when COVID hit us in 2020, we were kind of locked out of the lab. We didn't know what to do. Antiviral, everything was all over the news. And so we thought, well, lactoferrin has been published with antiviral effects, so let's see what happens. And so we sent some IDP samples with some purified lactoferrin off to a lab in the US to look at is there any hint of antiviral activity with IDP versus lactoferrin. And so this lab, it was all in vitro study, so it's lab dish-based stuff where they take viruses, they have some human cell lines that they grow up, and they expose the human cell lines to the products and the viruses and see if the viruses can actually enter the cells, which is how viruses infect you and work. And so we looked at HSV1, influenza A and B, adenovirus, and they also quite quickly, this lab was pretty onto it. They didn't have SARS-CoV-2, but they had a what do they call it? A mimic that does the same job, I guess. And so in all 5 cases, IDP prevented these viruses from entering the human cells on par or better than the lactoferrin. And so in one of those cases, HSV1, they were equal. In all other cases, IDP did a better job. So that was an interesting result in itself, telling us that it was probably the lactoferrin in the IDP for HSV1 that was doing the antiviral job. But for the other 4...
That the herpes simplex, isn't it? Yeah. HSV? Yep.
Sorry. Yep. And for influenza A and B and adenovirus and the SARS mimic, there's something else in the IDP that made it even better. Whatever that might be, there's probably another binding protein in there or 2 that do that job. And so what we did after that work is we decided to see if we could actually translate that to some human functionality. Just blocking spike proteins probably didn't indicate that it was going to be an antiviral ingredient. I mean, that's just a big ask. But one of the things I've thought about over the years is, you often have the natural health products sitting on one end of the spectrum and the pharmaceutical products sitting on the other. They fight each other. The companies, one or the other. But well, hang on, nature doesn't work that way. Antibiotics are really effective and really good. Antivirals, vaccinations are important, vastly important to do. What if we did some sort of combination therapy on the 2 things? So, actually using IDP supplementation, for example, in combination with vaccination, and see what happens with that. And so that's about as far as I can go with that. Like I said, we did just finished a clinical study last year, got some amazing results. We're about to publish those this year, but watch this space. It's pretty exciting.
Because that could explode in a good way. But you have got in the past one with the influenza vaccine. We can talk about that one.
That's the one we're about to publish.
Oh, okay. So that okay, yeah. Because this is really important as we get older. We don't actually older adults don't. We know that they don't respond to vaccines very well because they can't produce the antibodies. So that's the actual thing that we're getting at here that improve that. Okay, so watch this space for more information on that publication. So do let me know when that comes out. Perhaps we'll get you back on to share a little bit deeper what you're allowed to talk about then. Hey everyone, just interrupting the show really briefly to let you know about some exciting news. We have just launched our new biotech company, Aevum Labs. Now, Aevum was born from a decade of relentless research and a profound realization that the aging of the immune system, also known as immunosenescence, is at the core of all 14 hallmarks of aging. Now, as the co-founder, I discovered a real gap in the market for a safe, universally accessible product designed to support the aging immune system while also protecting our gut and our cellular health. This unmet need set me on a journey of scientific discovery, and together with a world-class team of scientists, biochemists, doctors, and regenerative medicine specialists, we harness cutting-edge research to develop our flagship formulation known as Rejuvenate. It's a revolutionary approach to promoting vitality and longevity. At Aevum Labs, we're committed to redefining what healthy aging looks like through innovation and precision science. Visit us at Aevum Labs, that's AEVUM labs.co.nz to find out more about the product and the science behind this foundational product, or grab some Rejuvenate in my shop at shop.lisatamati.com, and the link will also be in the show notes below. Now back to the show. So is there any other things that we haven't covered off that you think we should be sharing about IDP and its wonders? Any other areas in health, so besides the microbiome, the immune system? Those alone are a pretty big deal.
Yeah, I mean, those are definitely the focus of our business now. We continue to learn about mechanisms. We think it's quite important that whenever we find IDP can have some sort of effect, that there's a plausible reason why it's having that effect. Mm-hmm. And our research now is focused on three main areas: immune health, digestive health, and microbiome support. So definitely we've covered those pretty thoroughly, I think.
Yeah.
I can talk about this all day, but
but I think we have. I could too, actually.
Just interrupting the show to let you know about my longevity and anti-aging supplement range. I'd love you to go and check it out. Go to my website, lisatamati.com, and hit the shop button, and you'll see a curated range of supplements, the latest in anti-aging, longevity, health optimization, performance optimization. I've gone out into the world, interviewed the most amazing doctors and scientists, as you'll know if you follow the show, and gone and got some of the best products that are out there. Stuff that I give to my family, that's what's in my range. So go and check it out at lisatamati.com.
But, from can you just touch briefly on the lactoperoxidase, because that is another one of the major sort of players in this. What is lactoperoxidase per se, and what is that part of that story?
Yeah. Lactoperoxidase is the second most abundant milk protein in IDP. It has a minimum level of 18%, as opposed to the lactoferrin, which is a minimum 40%. Mm-hmm. And so the lactoperoxidase is an important molecule from an antimicrobial point of view. So lactoperoxidase is an enzyme. So like I said before, enzymes catalyze the reaction of two substrates into a product. And in the case of lactoperoxidase makes a peroxide react with a halide, which is a chemical compound like sodium thiocyanate or potassium iodide. The resulting product of that reaction is a short half-life, highly inhibitory molecule. And so lactoperoxidase is a very important natural defense protein for frontline defense for killing pathogenic organisms or inhibiting pathogenic organisms. So you have lactoperoxidase in your tears. It's very abundant in your saliva. Mm-hmm. And like I said, it's the second most abundant protein in the bioactive part of the whey.
And so that's going to be mainly on that antimicrobial side of the story.
Mainly so, but also it, like I said, one of the substrates is peroxide. So it actually contributes to the antioxidant effect too, because it mops up the free radicals. Yeah.
Okay, so it's free radicals. So is it sort of part of that sort of glutathione, antioxidant, or
well, it's more the peroxide and the superoxides. So peroxide can be quite irritating. But again, it's quite an important molecule in the body's immune defense system. And so we're pretty sure that it's primarily the LP that's responsible for reducing the redness and irritation, say, when you put IDP-based creams on your skin.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, because peroxide, it's like a disinfectant, as we know. Peroxide is on the outside, actually on the inside that the body produces, but then we have to get rid of it and break it down. So this would help with that process at all, like breaking it down. So I'm always looking out for things that stop my hair growing grey. Would that help?
Let's see. Gray hairs inside the cow's mammary gland. Bam.
I've asked you some random questions today, haven't I? But anything that breaks down peroxide is probably going to help. So I might put that in as an extra.
Yeah, I might have thought about that application about growing hair, not gray hair.
Well, I can tell you, if you could solve people's hair going grey, that would be a really big market. Who knows? I'm giving you a whole lot of areas to go and study for the next 20 years, I think. Dr. Rod, you've been wonderful today. I'd like to thank you so much for taking the time to do a really deep dive into this very exciting immune defense protein. We're really excited to work with you and your company, hopefully soon, to get our first formulations out the door. And we're excited to see where this goes, this research, and would really encourage people to stay tuned for more information on this, and we'll be hopefully having our formulations soon. If you're wanting to get your hands on some now, I've actually got it now in my shop. They've kindly set me up. So before we get our formulations out, which may be a month or 3, you can still get that. So I'll put links down below to doing that if you're interested. But thank you so much, Dr. Rod. You've been fabulous. Any last words before we wrap up today?
Not really, Lisa. Just thanks so much for having me on the show, and to your listeners, thanks for listening. We love talking about the wonders of milk and the wonders of nature. So it's just been a real pleasure to talk to you today.
Oh, it's been absolutely fabulous, and I've learned a lot about cows. I can tell you that much. Thanks, Dr. Rod.
That's it this week for Pushing the Limits. Be sure to rate, review, and share with your friends. Head over and visit Lisa and her team at lisatamati.com.